So I want you to just imagine this for a second. Picture standing in a massive, I mean, truly cavernous room, surrounded by, 1,000 other people.
Yeah, a huge crowd.
Right, exactly. And the air conditioning is just fighting this losing battle against the Arizona summer heat outside.
Oh, absolutely. Phoenix in the summer is no joke.
It's brutal. And the clock on the wall is relentlessly ticking down. And you are just acutely aware that the floor time in this convention center is costing the church like thousands of dollars every single minute.
The pressure is definitely on at that point.
It really is. So the chairman steps up to the microphone and asks you to vote yes on a simple one-paragraph thank you card to a retiring committee.
Sounds pretty harmless, right?
Right. I mean, it feels like the easiest yes of the whole day. But what if that thank you is actually a highly sophisticated parliamentary maneuver?
Oh, that's the real question.
Yeah, what if it's basically a trap designed to quietly bury a massive institutional failure before anyone can even ask a single question? So today we are taking a deep dive into Omnibus Resolution C.
And the scenario you just described, it perfectly captures the exact friction of church governance.
It really does.
Because when we gather for the LCMS Convention, the delegates are tasked with ecclesiastical supervision.
Which is a very formal way of saying what, exactly?
Right. It's a formal way of saying that they are responsible for holding the structure accountable to the actual mission.
Okay, got it.
But the sheer volume of paperwork, it creates a real vulnerability for them. I mean, the delegates are handed the Convention Workbook and today's Business Issue 1, which is essentially just a dense, heavy brick of proposed resolutions, overtures, and, theological reports.
I've actually held that book. It is deeply intimidating.
She's massive.
So you're a pastoral or lay delegate, and you've taken time away from your family and your job to fly out to Phoenix for the 2026 convention. And you are carrying this just massive burden of information.
Plus the jet lag.
Yeah. And everyone in the hallways and the online forums is already just totally exhausted by the headline-grabbing issues.
Right, the intense doctrinal battles, the big structural overhauls coming out of committees 6 or 7.
Exactly. But we are deliberately walking away from those main stage fights today.
Okay.
We are zeroing in on a sleeper issue that's just tucked away on page 55 of today's Business Issue 1.
Page 55.
Yep. And I want to set our mission for this deep dive right now. We are going to help you, the delegate, figure out if placing an item in Omnibus C actually helps the Synod responsibly give thanks, or, and this is the big one, if it turns a substantive concern into, symbolic appreciation, just to avoid the hard work of actual deliberation.
And to navigate that question, we can't just rely on our gut instinct. We really need a rigorous analytical framework here.
Okay, so what does that framework look like?
Well, the convention operates on this really complex intersection of theology and Robert's Rules of Order, so we have to evaluate these gratitude resolutions through a very specific lens.
Right.
First, we look for kingdom over castle thinking.
Kingdom over castle, I like that.
Yeah, we have to ask if the action prioritizes the outward-facing mission of the gospel, the kingdom, or if it's merely, fortifying the internal walls of the institutional castle.
That makes a lot of sense.
Second, we must ensure the structure reflects that the synod serves the congregations and the mission fields, not the other way around.
That second point feels absolutely crucial. I mean, the entire apparatus of the Synod in St. Louis exists to serve the local altar and the local pulpit.
Exactly.
If the bureaucratic structure starts acting like the congregations exist to serve it, well, the polarity is totally reversed.
And that inverted polarity is a constant danger in literally any large organization.
Mm-hmm.
Which leads to our third lens, right? We are looking for a posture of low control with high accountability.
Low control, high accountability. Got it.
And finally, we just have to be vigilant that faithful gratitude doesn't accidentally morph into uncritical institutional endorsement.
Right, because you don't want to just rubber stamp something.
Exactly. Respectful evaluation of the process does not require us to assume bad motives on the part of the floor committees, but it does require us to demand mission clarity, process clarity, and transparency.
So we can say thanks, but with boundaries.
Yeah, we need to be able to say, thank you for your service without implying, oh, we endorse every single methodology you use, or we are officially closing the book on the structural problems you're facing.
Okay, so let's build out the diagnostic checklist we are going to use for the specific items today. We are going to treat this like a formal review.
It sounds good.
For every item on page 55, we will identify the Omnibus C item itself. So that's the overture number, title, and the exact language.
Right, sticking to the text.
Then we will formulate a plain language summary so we know exactly what the overture originally asked for before it got bundled. Next, we'll define the proposed omnibus action, meaning what actually happens legally if the convention votes yes.
The parliamentary reality.
Exactly. And finally, we'll conduct an encouragement or gratitude analysis. We will figure out who is being thanked, whether the language implies hidden endorsements, and whether mere encouragement is sufficient, or if the mission field actually requires practical support, funding, or a referral.
And that structure will keep us grounded directly in the source documents. But to apply that structure effectively, we first really have to demystify the mechanics of the floor committees.
Yeah, how does this actually work behind the scenes?
Well, we have to look at how these omnibus categories are constructed behind closed doors, long before the delegates even arrive in Phoenix.
The history and function of those committees have always just fascinated me, because by the time an overture actually hits the convention floor, it has already been through a massive, massive filtration process.
A huge one.
The delegates aren't seeing the raw, unedited pleas from the local congregations. They're seeing what the floor committee has decided to show them.
Yeah, and you have to remember, the floor committees are tasked with an almost impossible volume of reading and synthesis.
I can't even imagine.
Imagine a committee receiving 50 different overtures from 50 different congregations, and they all touch on a similar topic.
Right, so they can't just present 50 different resolutions.
No, they can't. The committee has to distill those into a single actionable resolution. But to prevent the convention from physically running out of time, the standing rules authorize the use of 3 distinct omnibus categories.
Okay, what are those?
They're essentially parliamentary pressure valves. Omnibus A is the referral bucket.
Referral bucket, okay.
So an overture comes in, and the committee determines it requires long-term study. So they assign it to the board of directors or the Commission on Theology and Church Relations.
Gotcha, so they sort of pass the baton.
Exactly.
The issue survives, but it gets kicked down the road to a more specialized group.
Correct. Then we have Omnibus B. These are the overtures that are respectfully declined.
Ouch. Declined.
Yeah. The committee looks at the request and determines that the issue has already been settled by a previous convention, or, it contradicts existing bylaws in a way the committee just isn't prepared to entertain.
It's basically their mechanism for saying, asked and answered, we are moving on.
That's exactly it. And then we arrive at our main focus for today, Omnibus C.
The big one.
The rules explicitly limit this category to expressions of encouragement and gratitude.
So the underlying philosophy here just seems to be this constant battle between efficiency and transparency. I mean, I get the logistical nightmare of running a convention. The LCMS operates on a brutal schedule.
Very tight.
You physically cannot afford to spend an hour of premium floor time debating whether or not to say thank you to every retiring board member or, every district celebrating an anniversary.
Right, you'd never get to the actual doctrinal stuff.
Exactly. So bundling them into a single sweeping vote, kind of like a consent calendar at a massive corporate board meeting, it's a survival tactic for the chairman.
And that efficiency argument is entirely valid. It really is. The danger arises, though, when we examine the legal and parliamentary reality of an Omnibus C vote.
Okay, lay it on me.
If the convention adopts Omnibus C, the convention is not adopting the original overtures themselves.
Wait, really?
Really, they are merely receiving the overtures as an expression of encouragement.
So it doesn't actually do anything else?
No. The action creates no new directives, it mandates no policy, it alters no bylaws, it commits zero funding, it requires no follow-up reports.
Wow.
Unless it is pulled and amended separately, it is nothing more than a recorded thank you in the official proceedings of the Synod.
And that right there is the mechanism of the trap I mentioned at the start. It is a brilliant, almost unassailable parliamentary maneuver.
It's very clever.
Because you cannot be mad at a thank you. If a delegate steps to the microphone to complain about an item in Omnibus C, they risk looking like a bitter curmudgeon who just refuses to show basic Christian gratitude.
Yeah, nobody wants to be that guy at the microphone.
But if the original overture from a local congregation actually asked for a task force or a budget allocation or a serious structural reform, and the committee just stripped all those demands away and dropped the hollow thank you into Omnibus C, well, the committee has effectively buried the matter under a pile of forced politeness.
And that dynamic is the very definition of turning a substantive concern into symbolic appreciation.
It's frustrating.
It is. And it places a heavy, heavy burden on the individual delegate. Because the structure only serves the church if the delegates refuse to let efficiency obscure accountability.
All right, let's put this theory to the test. There are exactly 3 overtures bundled into the Omnibus C package for 2026. Only 3.
Just 3.
We are going to run every single one of them through our diagnostic checklist, starting with what appears to be the safest, most benign item on the list.
Okay, so we begin with Omnibus C item 131. The title is to give thanks for and offer renewed commitment to work of Atlantic District.
Right.
The source location is Today's Business, Issue 1, page 55, encompassing summary lines 362 through 374.
And what's the exact language?
The exact gratitude language attached to it is very simple. It says, "Thank God for 120 years of faithful gospel service and mission work of the Atlantic District."
Okay, let's move to the plain language summary step. This overture is basically asking the convention to formally recognize a massive historical milestone.
Huge milestone.
It wants the Synod to express gratitude for 120 years of faithful gospel proclamation and mission work out on the East Coast.
Right.
It is asking the gathered church to renew its commitment to the Atlantic District's mission and to acknowledge the grinding, difficult, but joyful work of the congregations, pastors, and lay leaders who have sustained that witness.
So for our third step, we look at the proposed omnibus action. If the convention adopts this, it is receiving the overture solely as encouragement and gratitude.
Meaning no money, no new policies.
Exactly. As we established, the action will not create a new directive, mandate, or funding commitment. The available documents confirm that this Omnibus C item creates absolutely no directive beyond the stated encouragement. The convention is essentially just sending a very formal, very nice anniversary card.
Okay, now for the critical part. The encouragement or gratitude analysis. Let's break it down. Who is being thanked here?
The Atlantic District as a whole, encompassing all its congregations and workers.
Right. And is the language modest and accurate? I'd say absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, surviving and planting churches for 120 years in the Northeast is a verifiable historic reality.
It's just a fact.
Does it imply an overreaching endorsement? No. It doesn't endorse a specific controversial methodology. It just simply praises faithful gospel service.
And applying our broader lens here, this item is a perfect example of kingdom over castle.
Because it points outward.
Exactly. It serves the congregations. It celebrates the actual mission work happening on the ground in local communities, rather than just celebrating the internal bureaucracy of the synodical structure. It is an unmitigated good.
Which naturally leads to my next question. If this item is so structurally and practically benign and just so theologically encouraging, why would a delegate even consider pulling it out of Omnibus C?
It's a fair question.
I mean, if I'm looking at my workbook, my instinct is just to let this sail through on the consent calendar and save my energy and social capital for the really big fights later in the week.
And that isn't the most common instinct, and honestly, it is usually correct.
Okay.
However, a highly strategic delegate might choose to pull this item not to oppose it, but to elevate it.
Elevate it? How so?
Well, the delegate might recognize that allowing 120 years of mission work to be quietly passed over in a bulk vote sort of does a disservice to the historical weight of the moment. By standing at the microphone and moving to separate Overture 131, the delegate forces the convention to stop and really look at it.
Oh, I see. You pull it out of the shadows and put it right onto the main stage.
Exactly.
You are basically saying to the room, look, we spend so much time arguing over bylaws and structural minutia. Let's just spend 5 minutes actually talking about church planting and survival in a tough region.
Furthermore, separating the item allows for amendments.
Amendments.
Right. A delegate might want to formally amend the resolution to read the names of specific historic East Coast congregations into the official record, ensuring their local legacy is permanently documented for history.
That would be really powerful.
Or, in the spirit of bridge building, a delegate might amend the overture to include other districts that are also celebrating major anniversaries this triennium. That way, the Thanksgiving is as wide and inclusive as possible.
That makes a lot of sense. So Overture 131 is really the textbook baseline. It is exactly what Omnibus C was designed to handle smoothly.
Yep, best case scenario.
But it also proves that even a perfectly safe item can be leveraged by a smart delegate to boost congregational participation in Thanksgiving.
Exactly right.
All right, let's move down the list. The temperature rises slightly with the next item because we are transitioning from thanking a broad geographic region to commending a specific named organization and a specific named leader.
Yeah, this is where things get a bit more complicated. We're looking at Omnibus C, item 133.
Okay,
The title is To Commend Family Discipleship Work of Concordia Center for the Family, which is frequently referred to as CCF.
got it.
The source is Today's Business, Issue 1, page 55, summary lines 3276 to 3288.
And the wording.
The exact commendation language is, thank God for the continued blessing of the work of CCF, including its leaders, especially Reverend Dr. Todd A. Bierman.
Okay, so the plain language summary here is straightforward but highly targeted. The overture commends the family discipleship ministry of CCF.
Right.
It thanks God for their specific work at equipping parents and households, and it goes out of its way to elevate and highlight the leadership of one individual, Reverend Dr. Todd A. Bierman.
Now, regarding the proposed omnibus action, the rules remain totally rigid. The convention is receiving the overture as commendation and gratitude, nothing more.
So again, no money.
Right. The available documents do not show that this Omnibus C item grants CCF any new authority, nor does it provide them with a single dollar of synodical funding, nor does it mandate that local congregations actually adopt their specific family discipleship programs.
Let's dive into the encouragement or gratitude analysis for this one, because this is where the friction really starts. Who is being commended? Concordia Center for the Family and Dr. Bierman.
Right.
Is the language accurate? Yes, it reflects their stated mission of equipping households.
Yeah.
But the endorsement level is where the warning lights start blinking for me.
Oh, absolutely.
When the convention singles out a specific organization, likely a recognized service organization or an RSO, and names a specific leader, the church body is bordering on a very strong endorsement of their specific methodology.
And the sources actually flagged this item as a medium priority on the delegate watch list precisely because of that tension.
Interesting. Medium priority.
Yeah. I mean, family discipleship is an urgent, critical kingdom priority. It is essential for outward witness and the internal catechesis of the next generation.
No one is arguing against family discipleship.
Right. But when the Synod uses its official voice to commend one specific sender among many, it inadvertently creates a dynamic of institutional favoritism.
It feels like leaving a glowing 5-star review for a local restaurant on a massive public platform, praising the chef by name, but refusing to actually buy a meal there or invest in the business.
That's a great way to put it.
The convention is saying you guys are doing the best work in the Synod while simultaneously providing zero structural support or funding through the omnibus action. It's just words.
And that analogy highlights the core problem here. The delegate really has to ask if encouragement is sufficient in this case. If family discipleship is truly a critical need for congregations, does placing this commendation in Omnibus C accidentally obscure the need for practical accountability and support?
That's the real question.
Does CCF actually need a synod-wide referral mechanism so congregations know how to find them? Does the Synod need to commission a study on how to integrate CCF's resources into the broader educational framework of the church?
Right, because if the original overture from the submitting congregation actually asked for funding or a formal partnership, and the floor committee reduced it down to a simple thank you in Omnibus C, that is a massive disservice to the mission field.
It really is.
It's the illusion of support without the reality of resources. So how does a delegate handle this on the floor?
Well, a delegate committed to low control and high accountability has a very strong case for pulling Overture 133.
What's the strategy?
First, for the sake of bridge building, a delegate might pull it to broaden the language. They could amend it to commend CCF alongside all other faithful family ministry partners, district initiatives, and RSOs across the Synod, thereby removing the appearance of exclusivity.
Okay, I like that. You level the playing field so the gratitude doesn't look like an exclusive contract for just one guy and one organization.
Exactly. And second, for the sake of mission clarity, a delegate could pull it to demand practical follow-up.
Like what?
They could amend the resolution to request a formal report from CCF to the next convention, detailing their activities, their resource gaps, and specifically how congregations can actually access their materials. You take a passive commendation and turn it into an active, accountable partnership.
This perfectly illustrates the danger of castle thinking. The institution gets to feel good about itself, by passing a nice resolution about family ministry without actually having to do the hard, expensive work of supporting family ministry.
Precisely.
Pulling it from the omnibus forces the institution to put its money, or at least its structural focus, where its mouth is.
And, the tension between symbolic appreciation and substantive support is difficult enough when discussing an active, growing ministry like CCF.
Yeah.
But that tension turns into outright agony when we move to the third and final item in Omnibus C. This item doesn't deal with an anniversary or a commendation. It deals with the closure of an institution.
Oh, wow. Yes. If the Atlantic District was a safe celebration and CCF was a question of endorsement, this final item touches a completely raw nerve within the Synod.
It's very heavy. We are looking at Omnibus C item 726. The title is To Give Thanks for the Board of Regents of Concordia College, New York.
Yep.
The source text is Today's Business, Issue 1, page 55, summary lines 3296 to 3311.
And what did the committee write for this one?
The exact gratitude language drafted by the committee reads, Thanks for diligent, fair, and faithful work.
Okay, so the plain language summary is just stark. This overture asks the convention to officially thank the Board of Regents of Concordia College, New York for their service, specifically highlighting their diligence and fairness during the agonizing, drawn-out period that ultimately led to the permanent closure of the college.
And we must be incredibly precise regarding the proposed omnibus action here.
Let's hear it.
The convention would be receiving the overture solely as gratitude. The source documents emphasize what this action does not do. It does not reopen any decisions about the college's closure. It does not assign blame for the systemic failures. It creates absolutely no new oversight mechanisms for the rest of the university system. It authorizes no new educational initiatives or funding to preserve the college's legacy in New York.
So it's over.
It is a closed book.
The encouragement or gratitude analysis on this item is highly, highly sensitive. Who is being thanked? Specifically and exclusively, the Board of Regents.
Right.
Is the language accurate? Well, it calls their work diligent, fair, and faithful during the closure process. But the endorsement level here is explosive.
Highly explosive.
Because expressing the official recorded gratitude of the Synod Convention for a Board of Regents that just oversaw the total collapse and closure of a historic college, that could very easily be perceived by the wider church as an official synodical endorsement of how that closure was handled.
Absolutely. And to understand the weight of this, we cannot evaluate Overture 726 in a vacuum. We must look at the broader context provided by the Convention Workbook regarding the Concordia University System, or the CUS.
All right, you have to look at the whole picture.
The source documents reveal a convention that is practically vibrating with anxiety over university governance, massive financial liabilities, and institutional trust.
I mean, I'm looking at the surrounding overtures in the workbook right now, and the contrast is just jarring.
It really is.
You have Overture 728, which is literally demanding a formal project post-mortem examination of Concordia University, Ann Arbor.
A post-mortem, yeah.
And then you have Overture 701, which is asking for a massive $75,000 study by the Board of Directors to analyze completely restructuring the corporate entity of the CUS.
$75,000.
A $75,000 study is a massive allocation of offering plate dollars. It means the system is facing an existential crisis. The delegates are terrified of the financial liabilities and the lack of structural accountability.
And against that turbulent backdrop of demands for transparency, autopsies, and corporate restructuring, the floor committee has taken the overture concerning a college that actually did close, and they have placed it into Omnibus C.
It's just wild to me.
They have categorized it as routine thanks.
I am struggling to find an analogy that captures how jarring that is. It feels like throwing a polite, catered retirement party for the executives of a manufacturing plant that just went bankrupt, while the line workers are standing out in the parking lot without their pensions, and the regulators are knocking on the front door.
That's exactly what it feels like.
It is surreal.
The pastoral and political tension is immense here. If we apply the principle of respectful process evaluation without assuming bad motives, which is crucial, we can interpret the committee's decision as an act of pastoral care.
Okay, walk me through that.
The committee is looking at a group of lay volunteers and church workers on that Board of Regents who were placed in an impossible situation. They had to make the agonizing decision to close a beloved institution, likely enduring severe personal criticism in the process.
Yeah.
The committee wants to offer them grace. They want to say, we acknowledge the heavy burden you carried, and we thank you for your service in the dark hours.
And I want to be very careful here because I absolutely respect the pastoral desire to care for the human beings who had to pull the plug. Nobody grows up dreaming of serving on a board of regents just so they can shut down a historic college.
Nobody.
The emotional toll on those board members must have been devastating.
It undoubtedly was. However, a convention is not just a pastoral care facility.
Right.
It is the highest governing body of the Synod. And the pastoral desire for quiet closure is exactly why a delegate must seriously consider the danger of leaving this item in the omnibus.
Right, because it avoids the hard questions.
Exactly. Does this use gratitude as a shield against accountability? Does it turn a substantive, painful concern into a symbolic gesture just to avoid a messy, painful debate on the floor?
If I am a delegate who values transparency and trust, I see two massive, unavoidable reasons why this item has to be pulled and debated separately. Let's walk through them.
Okay, the first reason is the necessity of expanding the thanks. As you noted in the analysis, the current language only thanks the Board of Regents.
Just the board.
A delegate must recognize that if the Synod is going to formally close the book on Concordia, New York, the gratitude cannot be restricted to the executives in the boardroom.
Who else needs to be included?
A delegate could pull this item to amend the resolution, ensuring that the official thanks and profound grief of the Synod are extended to the faculty who lost their livelihoods, to the staff who maintained the campus to the bitter end, to the students whose theological and academic formation was violently disrupted, and to the generations of faithful donors whose financial gifts are now gone. The gratitude must encompass the entire body that suffered the loss.
That is a really profound theological distinction. The church is not just its governance boards. It is the people. To thank the board while remaining silent on the faculty and students is a failure of congregational and synodical care.
Absolutely.
Okay, what is the second, perhaps more structural reason to pull this item?
To pivot the resolution from passive gratitude toward active transparency and trust.
How so?
A delegate might argue that simple thanks is woefully insufficient without a synodical commitment to learning from the institutional failure. If Overture 728 is demanding a postmortem of Ann Arbor and Overture 701 is demanding a $75,000 restructuring study, then a delegate can argue that Overture 726 must be amended to include a formal historical report on the closure of Concordia, New York.
I see. So you pull the item to say, we thank the regents for their agonizing service, but for the sake of the surviving Concordia universities, we must officially study what led to this closure so we do not repeat these mistakes.
Exactly.
You take a resolution designed to quietly close a door, and you kick it back open for the sake of the surviving schools.
Precisely. You use the parliamentary process to demand mission clarity and doctrinal clarity regarding how the Synod manages its higher education institutions. You refuse to let omnibus efficiency bury matters that require public clarity.
Okay, so we have thoroughly unpacked the three items on page 55. We've seen how a 120-year district anniversary can be elevated, how a commendation for a family ministry leader tests the boundary between encouragement and endorsement, and how a painful thank you to a college board of regents exposes the raw nerve of institutional accountability.
We've covered a lot of ground.
It is abundantly clear that Omnibus C is a highly strategic, incredibly potent parliamentary bucket. Which leads us to the final and really the most intensely practical part of our deep dive. What exactly does the delegate do when the moment arrives?
And this is where we must bridge the gap between theoretical analysis and actual floor strategy, because navigating Robert's Rules of Order in a room of 1,000 people is inherently intimidating. The psychological pressure of the convention floor is immense.
It really is. I want our listener to visualize this. The chairman announces that the floor is open for Omnibus Resolution C. The convention has been working for hours. People are tired.
Very tired.
They are looking at the clock, thinking about the lunch buffet or the shuttle bus back to the hotel. The chairman says, "All in favor." And the overwhelming momentum of the room is just to shout, "Aye," and move on. To disrupt that momentum requires genuine courage.
It requires courage, but it also requires precise mechanics. The convention guidebook provides the exact script the delegate must use.
Okay, what's the script?
If you determine that an item must be pulled, you must immediately proceed to a microphone. You wait to be recognized by the chair. When your microphone goes live, you do not launch into a long speech.
Keep it short.
Very short. You use this exact motion language. Mr. Chairman, I move to remove overture whatever number from Omnibus Resolution C and refer it to floor committee whatever number or name for action.
So, if you are pulling the Concordia, New York item, you say, "Mr. Chairman, I move to remove Overture 726 from Omnibus Resolution C and refer it to Floor Committee 7 for action."
That is the legal mechanism. But the legal mechanism is useless without parliamentary persuasion. You have just interrupted the efficiency of the convention. You are standing between 1,000 delegates and their lunch.
Yeah, they're not going to be happy with you.
Right. So you must immediately justify your action before the room turns against you.
The guidebook advises having a crisp, tightly constructed, one-sentence rationale ready to deploy the second you finish the formal motion. You have to clearly state the core issue and connect it to the broader mission of the church.
You might say something like, this matter deserves separate consideration because it affects congregational accountability and the pastoral care of displaced workers, and it should not be handled only by an omnibus referral.
Let's tailor that rationale for the 3 items we discussed.
Yeah.
If you are at microphone 4, pulling the Atlantic District item, you say, this matter deserves separate consideration because we must expand the joy and recognize specific historic congregations by name. If you are pulling the CCF family ministry item, you say, this matter deserves separate consideration because family discipleship demands mission clarity, structural integration, and practical support, not just a passing commendation.
Spot on.
And if you are pulling the Concordia New York item, you say, this matter deserves separate consideration because it affects the pastoral care of displaced faculty and the governance accountability of our entire university system, and our surviving schools demand we learn from this closure.
By clearly articulating those rationales, you are setting the terms of the debate. You are appealing to the delegates' sense of ecclesiastical supervision, because the reality of the floor dynamics is harsh.
Very harsh.
Removing an item from Omnibus C requires a majority vote. 50% plus one of the delegates in that room must agree with you that the item is worth spending their precious, expensive floor time to debate.
So you have to make the delegates realize that the theological and institutional cost of their silence is far higher than the financial cost of 5 minutes of floor debate.
Exactly.
You are asking them to take responsibility for their vote, rather than hiding behind the comfort of parliamentary efficiency.
The structure exists to serve the church, but the structure only remains healthy if the delegates are willing to hold it accountable in the public square of the convention.
Let's recap the journey we've taken today. We started with the overwhelming physical brick of today's business, Issue 1, and we zoomed all the way in on page 55.
We really zoomed in.
We explored the hidden mechanics of Omnibus C, uncovering how the consent calendar of gratitude functions as a pressure valve for the floor committees. We ran 3 specific overtures through our diagnostic checklist. We looked at the celebration of the Atlantic District's 120 years of mission work.
Which was mostly safe, but amendable.
Right. We examined the commendation of the Concordia Center for the Family, wrestling with the tension between simple encouragement and uncritical institutional endorsement. And we waded into the deep, painful waters of the closure of Concordia College, New York, analyzing how a church body must balance pastoral care for a traumatized Board of Regents with the absolute necessity for systemic accountability and historical transparency.
And throughout this entire process, we maintained our analytical framework. Kingdom over castle, synod-serving congregations, low control, high accountability, strong doctrine for outward witness, not inward institutional self-protection.
As we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you, the delegate, with a final provocative thought to mull over on your flight to Phoenix. We've spent a lot of time today analyzing the cold, hard parliamentary mechanics of gratitude.
We have.
But true thanksgiving, biblically speaking, is not a parliamentary maneuver. It is a profound theological act. It is how we, as creatures, acknowledge the active, relentless provision of our Creator. It is how we confess that the harvest belongs entirely to the Lord of the harvest, and not to our own strategic planning.
Thanksgiving is central to our worship. It is the proper posture of the church before God.
It is. But when we transition from the sanctuary to the convention floor, when we enter the realm of church governance and institutional politics, gratitude can sometimes be subtly weaponized. It can be used as a polite sealant to smooth over deep structural cracks in the foundation.
And that's the danger we have to watch out for.
So I challenge you to ponder this as you review your workbook. When does the church's official recorded gratitude stop being a doxology and start becoming a mechanism for institutional self-protection?
That is the essential question of ecclesiastical supervision.
As you prepare to sit in that massive room, and as you prepare to press that voting button on the convention floor, how will you ensure that when the LCMS officially says thank you, it isn't just a polite dismissal of a painful problem? How will you ensure that our gratitude is always securely paired with the transparency, the rigorous accountability, and the practical on-the-ground support that truly serves the mission field? You aren't just there to rubber stamp the agenda. You are navigating the complex, muddy waters of a living, breathing church body. We wish you safe travels to Phoenix, incredible endurance for the long legislative sessions, and profound discerning wisdom when you inevitably step up to that microphone. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us.